Detectives proceeding cautiously as they investigate the death of a missing California teenager whose body was found in a car belonging to popular singer-songwriter David. How 15-year-old Celeste Rivas died and whether a crime was committed remain crucial questions that sources tell ABC News could take weeks, even months, to answer.
Everybody knew David was in trouble, but nobody imagined just how quickly things would spiral. His name was already being whispered in controversy, but after his recent detention, the whispers erupted into a roar. Word spread that he had been attacked inside jail, and the rumors only fueled the firestorm that was already consuming him. It wasn't just the legal fallout or the headlines. It was the body in the Tesla, the mounting receipts, the growing mountain of circumstantial evidence that painted a disturbing picture of a young star at the center of a scandal darker than anyone could have predicted. Just months ago, he was being celebrated as the next big name in music, hailed as a rising voice for his generation. Now he was being dragged through one of the most chilling scandals in recent history, a story that blurred the lines between art, obsession, and crime. The discovery was as horrifying as it was surreal. A Tesla registered in David's name was towed and impounded, and when workers opened its trunk days later, they found a mutilated and decomposed body. The victim was identified as 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, a teenager who had vanished months earlier in April 2024. At first, many wondered if it could be some terrible coincidence, but connections between Celeste and David emerged almost immediately. Photos began surfacing of the two together. Screenshots circulated on Discord and TikTok showing FaceTime calls, alleged private messages, and even claims that David had paid off some of Celeste's middle school classmates to keep quiet. These weren't just vague rumors or speculative threads. They were receipts that fans were dissecting in real time, sharing them across platforms, and creating a timeline that was impossible to ignore. One of the most haunting links came from a tattoo. Celeste had inked the letters SH on her right index finger, a simple and almost cryptic mark. But when images of David's own tattoo surfaced, the match was unmistakable. Same placement, same design. Even if tattoos can be common, the parallel raised more than eyebrows. It connected the two in a way that was almost intimate, almost deliberate. Then came the heartbreaking confirmation from Celeste's own mother. She told reporters that her daughter's boyfriend had been named David, and that the tattoo matched exactly the one police described. Suddenly, it wasn't a question of rumor versus fact. The circle of suspicion closed tightly around him, and it was no longer just speculation, but a narrative that pointed to something sinister. The autopsy did not provide quick answers. The medical examiner deferred the cause of death pending further forensic analysis, citing decomposition and mutilation that made it impossible to rule immediately. But even without that clarity, circumstantial evidence stacked higher each day. And what rattled the internet the most wasn't just the crime scene or the tattoo, it was the music. David had recorded a track called Celeste back in December 2023, long before her body was discovered, and its lyrics now sounded less like poetic musings and more like a grim confession. Lines about obsession, scent, and fixation felt like coded admissions rather than metaphor. At the time of its leak, fans brushed it off as another moody ballad. But after Celeste was found in his car, every lyric became damning, every note soaked in suspicion. And it didn't stop there. His breakout hit Romantic Homicide suddenly felt recontextualized. Lyrics about killing in the back of his mind, sung with melancholic detachment, now resonated with an eerie weight. What once was marketed as a dark but artistic exploration of heartbreak now read like a diary entry that foreshadowed something real. Coincidences stack only so far before they begin to feel like a pattern, and in this case, that pattern was terrifying. Fans and critics alike were forced to ask, was his music merely art imitating life, or was it evidence hiding in plain sight? The authorities clearly weren't treating it as coincidence. Reports confirmed that U.S. Marshals raided the Hollywood Hills home where David had been staying. Neighbors had already told journalists they regularly saw the same black Tesla with Texas plates parked outside. During the raid, officers seized electronics, carried out bags of potential evidence, and even used luminol in drains to check for blood traces. The message was clear. Investigators suspected something horrific had unfolded there, something that went beyond just having a body turn up in a car. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Interscope, the label that had once pushed his career with relentless promotion, didn't just press pause. They yanked every campaign associated with him. His brand deals collapsed overnight. Crocs and Hollister, two of his biggest sponsors, cut ties with alarming speed. His deluxe album rollout was declared dead, and even his closest defenders online struggled to keep their stories consistent. Some argued he had been framed, that someone else could have stolen his car and planted the body. Others insisted he had been on tour, far removed from where the crime could have occurred, but the sheer weight of receipts, tattoos, photos, and lyrics made those defenses sound increasingly hollow. And then came the news of his assault in jail. According to insiders, other inmates had targeted him almost immediately. Whether it was a premeditated attack or just an opportunistic beating, the message was the same. People behind bars don't take kindly to those accused of harming minors. The attack underscored his rapid fall from celebrated artist to despised pariah. A descent so steep it left fans and observers stunned at how quickly everything had unraveled. What made the story even more haunting was the sense that this was only the beginning. Online communities were already combing through every shred of evidence. Songs, photos, streams, constructing timelines and dissecting connections. Streamers debated live whether David could really be guilty, some clinging to doubt, others convinced by the pattern of coincidences that no longer looked like coincidences at all. And when people realized that Romantic Homicide had been released on Celeste's 12th birthday, it felt less like irony and more like a deliberate and terrifying signal. By the time Celeste's mother confirmed her daughter's identity through the tattoo, public opinion had already hardened. Whether in Discord threads, TikTok timelines, or YouTube debates, the consensus grew louder. Every road led back to him. His silence, his team's lack of response, and the mounting evidence only cemented the narrative. His music, once consumed as vulnerable heartbreak, was now reframed as a possible soundtrack to obsession and violence. And the one question that hung over everything was as chilling as it was simple. How much darker could this get? The storm that followed the discovery was unlike anything the music industry had seen in years. The moment Celeste's name was publicly linked to David, the ripple effects detonated across record labels, streaming platforms, and brand partnerships. The music industry is often slow to respond to moral scandals, but this time it sprinted. Interscope Records didn't just hit pause on his promotion. They yanked every rollout, every campaign, every ad connected to him. Crocs and Hollister, two of his largest brand deals, severed ties overnight. His agency went silent. Sony Music Publishing, which had been managing rights to his catalog, froze activity around his songs. To corporations, it wasn't about waiting for due process. It was about optics. Nobody wanted to be associated with the man whose Tesla had been found with the dismembered body of a teenage girl in the trunk. As one streamer bluntly put it during a live broadcast, this wasn't innocent until proven guilty. This was guilty until proven innocent, because public perception had already made up its mind. Online, chaos erupted just as quickly. At first, defenders lined up, spinning theories that he had been framed. TikTok users and Discord communities suggested that someone else planted the body, or that he couldn't possibly be guilty because he had been on tour during the critical months. But the defense cracked under pressure as more receipts surfaced. The matching tattoos, the leaked Celeste track, the raid on his Hollywood Hills residence. Theories about framing lost traction, and even fans who had been most loyal grew quiet. The collapse of support was visible in real time. Streamers who once vouched for him were suddenly on the defensive. Jason Lewin, who had gone live defending David's character, was grilled by Ludwig on stream, accused of standing by a murderer. What had once been fandom fractured into factions of betrayal, disbelief, and conspiracy. The conspiracies multiplied in the vacuum. Fans began rewatching old streams, searching for overlooked clues. Karaoke videos at 3 a.m., arcade streams where David appeared alongside underage girls, blurry TikTok clip. Suddenly every frame was reanalyzed, every lyric treated as coded evidence. On Reddit, fans built elaborate timelines linking song release dates to events in Celeste's life, mapping birthdays, disappearances, and lyric references as if they were constructing a crime board. The most chilling discovery came when someone pointed out that romantic homicide, the song that made David famous, had dropped on Celeste's 12th birthday. To fans, that felt less like coincidence and more like calculation. Every song began to feel like a diary entry, every cryptic lyric a veiled confession. Meanwhile, law enforcement doubled down. TMZ reported that investigators weren't just looking at the Tesla, they were scouring David's Hollywood Hills home with luminol, searching drains and surfaces for traces of blood. Officers hauled computers and evidence bags out of the residence, raising questions about whether the dismemberment might have taken place there. Neighbors confirmed they had seen the black Tesla with Texas plates parked outside regularly, further connecting him to the crime scene. For detectives, it was about tying together physical evidence with the growing digital trail. For the public, it was another nail in the coffin of his innocence. The media seized on the story with ruthless intensity. Within hours, outlets from TMZ to News Nation plastered David's face across their headlines. What began as a missing persons case in Lake Elsinore became a national firestorm. On nightly news shows, anchors emphasized Celeste's age, just 13 when she disappeared, and reminded viewers that she was still legally a child when the songs allegedly referencing her were written. Commentators didn't frame it as a tragic misunderstanding. They framed it as predation, as an indictment of celebrity culture, and as proof of how far the industry will go to protect its rising stars until the truth is forced into the open. On one program, a host bluntly declared that David must be shaking in his boots, now that the raid had tied him directly to Celeste's disappearance. The narrative was brutal, but it resonated with a public already convinced of his guilt. Fan communities mirrored that intensity. Discord servers once devoted to his music became hubs of amateur investigation. Users shared alleged DM, screenshots of conversations, and grainy photos, treating them like pieces of a puzzle. Some insisted they had been warning others about his behavior for months. Others claimed he had paid off Celeste's classmates to keep quiet, that his tattoos and lyrics had always been clues hiding in plain sight. The effect was a collapse of trust. Every post, every lyric, every Instagram story was reframed as potential evidence. The artistic mystique that had built his career now felt like a criminal profile. As prosecutors quietly built their case, the unanswered questions multiplied. Was David acting alone, or did others enable him? The timeline suggested that Celeste may have been in his orbit for over a year. If that was true, how many people around him knew? He had managers, agents, brand handlers, tour staff, Discord moderators. Could none of them have suspected, or had some chosen to look the other way because his career was too profitable? Predators rarely operate in silence. they require enablers, and the internet was demanding to know who else might have been complicit. The whispers turned to accusations. Was his manager protecting him by renting the Hollywood Hills house? Did label executives know about the rumors and ignore them? Did his inner circle choose money over morality? The devastating confirmation from Celeste's mother only deepened the outrage. When police described the SH tattoo on the victim's finger, she immediately knew it was her daughter. She told reporters that her daughter's boyfriend had been named David, confirming what fans already suspected. That revelation ended almost all debate. For fans, it was betrayal. The singer who had built a career on vulnerability and heartbreak was suddenly cast as the villain in his own lyrics. For the music industry, it was a wake-up call. They had placed their bets on a young artist whose darkest impulses may have been hiding in plain sight. And for prosecutors, it was ammunition. Every tattoo, every lyric, every screenshot now part of a potential case file. Yet despite all of this, David hadn't been charged. His name hadn't been officially listed as a suspect. His lawyers stayed silent, his PR team refused to comment, and his music remained available on streaming platforms. That gap between public perception and legal reality created a dangerous paradox. Online, the verdict was already written. In court, prosecutors still needed to prove it with evidence. But in a digital age where virality can destroy a career faster than an indictment, the damage was already irreversible. What began as the shocking discovery of a body in a trunk had grown into something larger. A referendum on celebrity accountability, on the blind spots of fame, and on how easily an industry can sell an image while ignoring the shadows lurking behind it. By the time the case had reached the public eye in full, the internet was already knee-deep in its own investigation. Fans and commentators weren't waiting for police press conferences or official updates. They were constructing intricate timelines, comparing tattoos, linking lyrics to real-world dates, and building sprawling detective boards on Reddit and Discord. XQC, one of the biggest streamers online, accidentally became a ringleader of sorts when his reaction to the discovery went viral. He pointed out that the release date of Romantic Homicide matched Celeste's birthday. For some, that observation felt like coincidence. For others, it was chilling confirmation that the songs were more than music. Suddenly, his discography wasn't art. It was being treated like a diary of confessions hiding in plain sight. The obsession grew darker as fans dug into old footage, karaoke nights filmed at 3 a.m., arcade streams where David appeared alongside young girls, blurry TikTok clips from months earlier. Every frame was slowed down, cropped, and dissected. Users swore they could see Celeste in the background of his videos. They shared screenshots from Instagram stories, posted alleged receipts from Discord, and began to connect dots with the fervor of amateur detectives. What made it worse was that much of this evidence wasn't being unearthed by outsiders. It was coming from within his own fan communities. Discord servers that once promoted his music turned into crime archives, with users accusing David of paying off classmates, grooming young followers, and even embedding details of his crimes into his lyrics. The atmosphere was one of digital vigilante justice, and it spread faster than any official investigation could keep up with. Commentators like Dante weighed in not just on David's actions, but on the culture that had allowed everything to fester. His argument was that this wasn't just about one man. It was about an entire community, fans, brands, executives, that had ignored the red flags until it was too late. And that's what made the scandal so explosive for the music industry. Interscope thought they had their next breakout star, moody, marketable, streaming numbers in the millions. Crocs and Hollister saw him as the perfect Gen Z ambassador, but now those partnerships had become liabilities. The speed with which corporations dropped him wasn't just self-preservation. It was a reflection of how toxic the association had become. In the post-#MeToo era, no company wanted to be accused of enabling an abuser, especially one tied to the death of a 15-year-old girl. Yet the urgency with which companies distanced themselves only raised further questions. Did nobody in his orbit know? Did no one notice the suspiciously young girls in his streams, the Discord chatter, the cryptic lyrics? Or did they notice and choose to look away because the money was too good? That uncomfortable question has lingered over the entire scandal, turning it from a story of individual downfall into a cultural indictment. If David's camp ignored the warning signs, how many other rising stars are being shielded in similar ways? How many skeletons are hiding in closets that labels refuse to open? Despite the mounting evidence, David had not been formally charged. Police raided his Hollywood Hills home, seized electronics, and tested drains for traces of blood, but no official charges had yet been filed. That gap between the internet's verdict and the court's silence became its own paradox. Online, he was already guilty. Legally, he was still uncharged. The public demanded swift justice, but prosecutors needed more than tattoos and song lyrics. They needed timelines, forensics, and testimony. They needed proof beyond the digital breadcrumbs the internet had already declared damning. Investigators began focusing on the Tesla itself, treating it as both crime scene and digital witness. Modern cars are effectively smartphones on wheels, logging who unlocks them, when, where, and how. Prosecutors were expected to subpoena Tesla's access logs, cross-referencing them with cell site data and surveillance cameras. If multiple authorized users had been added to the vehicle, or if patterns of late-night access emerged, it could provide a precise map of when Celeste's body was placed in the trunk and by whom. The fact that the Tesla was parked on a public street long enough to be cited and towed provided another hard timeline. Whoever left it there knew the risk of impound and still walked away, an action that looked less like panic and more like calculation. Geographic receipts also surfaced. Journalists geotagged a photo of David in Lake Elsinore months before Celeste disappeared, a town just minutes from her home. On its own, it didn't prove a crime, but alongside the raid, the lyrics, and the tattoo, it shredded the defense of random coincidence. Meanwhile, records showed that Celeste had been reported missing multiple times, once in January 2024 and again in April. That history hinted at instability and repeated absences from home, raising broader questions about how schools, authorities, and even online platforms had failed to protect her, who had flagged her disappearance, and what was done about it. Did anyone escalate beyond gossip and DM? The systemic failures loomed as large as the personal ones. Inside David's fan communities, those failures were amplified by mislabeling. Screenshots surfaced where Celeste was allegedly tagged 18+. In online threads, a digital fig leaf that normalized the unacceptable and allowed predators to hide in plain sight. Combine that with claims that classmates were paid off, and you had a portrait not just of individual wrongdoing, but of an ecosystem complicit in looking the other way. By the time his Seattle tour stop was canceled on the same day, Celeste's name went public. The split between commerce and catastrophe was complete. Tickets for upcoming shows were still on sale, even as his house was being raided for evidence of dismemberment. It was a surreal dual reality that fueled public anger. For prosecutors, the case hinged on forensics. If luminol revealed blood traces in his Hollywood Hills mansion, if tissue remnants were found in drains, if Tesla logs or iCloud backups revealed incriminating access patterns, then circumstantial evidence would transform into criminal proof. Any attempt to destroy devices or wipe accounts could add obstruction charges, and if others in his circle had helped, conspiracy, or accessory charges were possible. Federal involvement was also on the table. The stakes weren't just about proving guilt, they were about untangling how far complicity reached. But the more viral the case became, the harder a fair trial would be. Every hot take stream, every coincidence board on Reddit, every TikTok theory risked poisoning a jury pool. Defense attorneys would argue that their client couldn't possibly receive an unbiased hearing. Prosecutors, meanwhile, had to balance the public's demand for swift justice against the slow grind of building a case that would hold up in court. The paradox deepened. In the court of public opinion, David was already finished. In the court of law, his fate was still unwritten. Strip away the hashtags, the streams, the endless speculation, and one chilling truth remains. A child is dead. Celeste Rivas was only 15. The tattoos, the lyrics, the receipts, all of them orbit around that devastating fact. For her family, the story has already ended in tragedy. For David, the ending may yet play out in a courtroom. For the rest of us, it is a mirror held up to our culture. A culture that worships young artists, elevates them overnight, ignores red flags, and only wakes up once there's a body in the trunk. Fame doesn't erase accountability, it magnifies it. Whether David stands trial or not, his songs will forever be heard not as art, but as evidence. His name, once tied to rising stardom, will be remembered for the headlines that followed. And the haunting question that lingers is not just about guilt or innocence, but about whether an industry and a society enabled this tragedy long before it was uncovered.